He didn't feel sad. That was the confusing part. There were no tears, no dramatic breakdowns, no sleepless nights filled with panic. If someone had asked him how he was doing, he would have shrugged and said, "I'm fine." And in a way, he meant it, because nothing was technically wrong. He had a stable routine, he paid his bills, he showed up to work, he replied to messages, he remembered birthdays. From the outside, everything looked steady, predictable, responsible, adult. But somewhere along the way, something inside him had gone quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not restful quiet, just absence. He noticed it one evening while watching a show he used to love. He laughed at the right moments, he followed the plot, but he didn't feel anything. The scenes passed in front of him like images behind glass, visible, understandable, but distant. He told himself he was just tired. Everyone feels tired sometimes, so he kept going. Days continued as usual. Morning alarm, coffee, work, scrolling, sleep. He still did everything he was supposed to do. He still met expectations. He still functioned. But moments that once carried weight began to feel strangely light. Good news felt muted. Bad news felt muted. Even achievements landed softly, like they belonged to someone else. When a friend shared exciting life updates, he smiled and congratulated them. He meant it, but inside, the reaction felt delayed, filtered, as if emotion had to travel through layers before reaching him. Sometimes it didn't arrive at all. He wasn't overwhelmed, he wasn't panicking, he just felt flat. And flatness is harder to explain than sadness. Sadness has language, it has visible signs, but numbness hides, it blends in. It lets you keep performing while quietly disconnecting you from your own life. He began noticing small changes. Music that once moved him felt like background noise. Conversations felt transactional. Silence felt empty instead of calming. He tried to pinpoint when it started. There wasn't a clear moment, no major event, no dramatic turning point, just a gradual dimming, like a room slowly losing light without anyone flipping a switch. He wondered if this was just adulthood. Maybe this was what being responsible felt like. Maybe emotions were something you slowly grew out of. But late at night, when everything was quiet, he felt something else. Not sadness, not fear, but a subtle awareness that he was moving through life without fully being in it. He would sit in his apartment, lights low, phone in his hand, scrolling without really seeing, absorbing information without processing it. Time passed, minutes became hours, and he felt nothing about it. That frightened him more than sadness would have, because sadness at least proves something is alive inside you. Numbness makes you question whether you're still connected at all. He started questioning himself. Was he ungrateful? Was he becoming indifferent? Was something wrong with him? But even the questions felt muted. They floated without urgency. He still showed up for people. He still fulfilled responsibilities. But it felt mechanical, like completing tasks rather than living moments. There were days when he caught himself staring at nothing, not thinking deeply, not spiraling, just blank. And sometimes that blank space felt heavy. He missed the version of himself who used to react strongly, who used to care intensely, who used to feel excitement, disappointment, anticipation. Now everything felt level, neutral. Even his own achievements felt like items on a checklist. Completed, stored away, forgotten. He wondered if this was burnout, but he wasn't exhausted. He wondered if it was depression, but he wasn't deeply sad. He wasn't in crisis. He was just disconnected, and disconnection can exist quietly for a long time. He began noticing how often he avoided stillness. When the room was quiet, he reached for noise. A podcast, a video, background music. Anything to fill the space, because when the silence lingered too long, he felt the emptiness more clearly. It wasn't painful, It was hollow. He realized something unsettling. He had been pushing through life for so long, managing expectations, staying composed, being dependable, that somewhere along the way, he had stopped checking how he actually felt. Not because he didn't care, but because he had trained himself to prioritize functioning over feeling. And functioning doesn't require emotion. It requires consistency, structure, output. He was very good at those things. But one night, instead of turning something on to distract himself, he sat in silence. No phone, no television, no music. At first, it felt uncomfortable. His mind searched for something to grab onto. But when nothing came, he noticed something subtle. Underneath the numbness wasn't emptiness. It was fatigue. Not physical exhaustion, emotional fatigue. The kind that comes from holding yourself together for too long, from minimizing your own reactions, from staying steady so nothing falls apart. Numbness hadn't appeared out of nowhere. It had formed gradually, as protection, as adaptation, as a way to keep going. He had convinced himself that as long as he wasn't falling apart, he was fine. But fine isn't the same as connected, and surviving isn't the same as living. He started experimenting with small changes, not dramatic life overhauls, just subtle shifts. He began taking walks without headphones. At first, the silence felt strange, but slowly he started noticing details again. The sound of wind, the rhythm of his footsteps, the temperature of the air. These sensations didn't overwhelm him with emotion, but they grounded him. He started writing short notes at night, not profound reflections, just simple sentences. Today felt long. I didn't react much. I felt neutral most of the day. Seeing the words on paper made the numbness feel more tangible, less mysterious, more human. Some days, emotion flickered briefly, a moment of irritation, a flash of appreciation, a small spark of amusement. They were subtle, but they were real. And that mattered more than any dramatic transformation could feel. He realized something important. Numbness wasn't proof that he was broken. It was a signal, a sign that he had been operating in survival mode for longer than he realized. When you mute stress long enough, you can accidentally mute everything else too. The goal wasn't to force intensity back into his life. It wasn't to manufacture passion. It was simply to allow space. Space for reaction, space for honesty, space for feeling, even if the feeling was small. He began answering people more truthfully when they asked how they were. Not dramatically, just honestly. I've been feeling a little disconnected lately. Saying it out loud felt unfamiliar, but also relieving. He stopped judging himself for not feeling enough. He stopped comparing his emotional responses to how they should look. He allowed the neutrality to exist without labeling it as failure. Weeks passed. Nothing dramatic happened. There was no sudden rush of emotion, no cinematic breakthrough. But gradually, the flatness began to soften. Moments felt a little warmer. Conversations felt a little more present. Silence felt less hollow. He laughed one evening, genuinely, and noticed it. Not because it was loud, but because it felt real. And that small return of authenticity meant more than any dramatic transformation could feel. He didn't feel intensely joyful. He didn't feel overwhelming inspiration. But he felt something, and something was better than nothing. He learned that emotional numbness doesn't always look like despair. Sometimes it looks like stability. Sometimes it looks like maturity. Sometimes it looks like strength. But underneath can be a person who hasn't paused long enough to process what they've been carrying. And the way back isn't dramatic. It's gentle. It's patient. It's quiet. It begins with noticing. Noticing that you've been disconnected. Noticing that you've been functioning without feeling. Noticing that surviving isn't the same as being present. Some comebacks don't start with falling apart. They start with awareness. A small decision to reconnect. A willingness to feel, even if the feeling is subtle. Because being connected doesn't mean being overwhelmed. It means being here. And sometimes the most powerful comeback isn't loud. It's the quiet return to yourself.